is already 25% over. We're going to take up under finance, under information technology. Cindy, you want your patriot in crime over here?
Experts up here, the gig squad, as they were recently referred to as.
Yeah, you don't sit up here if you want to. Whatever.
One and one. Why don't you? One of you stay up there, and one of you. We have closer access to. Cindy, start us off.
I think, as we talked about, the concern here, if we look at this org chart, is that, at 1 October, we're eliminating one person on the side of this organization that responds to computers and phones and the resources sitting on the desks of the people that work here at the city, and that leaves them fairly thin in that regard, and Paul can speak to more specifics there. On the other side, which is, what we like to think of as the back-of-the-house operation, where the computer systems there support the general ledger, revenue posting, utility billing, which is only one of the things that they do back there. After the sale of the electric utility is when we're proposing to eliminate two of those positions, leaving us in a place where there are only two people that work here that know how to do what goes on back there on a daily basis. That is just leaves us very thin in terms of coverage. The other thing that's a little bit of a concern, and I don't think you can avoid it when you start doing this kind of restructuring, is I would say that some of my assessment of what I'm able to achieve in these departments with limited numbers of people actually have to do with the people themselves. And I will tell you that, for instance, in the cashiering section, my cashier supervisor, I do believe that her and one other person can manage 33,000 electric bills plus all the rest of it every month. A person with not as much experience or as much moxie. Exactly. If she, for instance, were to leave and we would have a new hire in there, I don't know. So that's unavoidable. It happens in every organization, but some of this is predicated on the specific people in the jobs and not just the positions. So with that, Paul and Robert can answer any specifics you want to know.
On page 26, Council have any questions?
I have some, and they're questions. They're nothing more. If you would like, equipment maintenance last year was $78.75. So far this year, you spent $54.77, and you have a budget of $13. So if you just streamlined it, $75 would be enough. But I'm sure there's an explanation. I can't see that.
What was the account number on that again?
It's 3460001, and I'm sorry to have my back to you.
No, that's fine. I'm Paul Mills, supervisor of networks and telecommunications, and we have maintenance of various equipment that comes due at different times of the year. Some of it is due in the summer and in August, and towards more of the end of the fiscal year. Then it's just an ongoing. We have items. That range from $4,000 to $6,000 that we pay throughout the year.
And it has been reduced from last year, I think, to reflect more actuals, Mr. Wenger. So
yes.
Well, okay. The next one, network maintenance. Actually, you spent $63.61 last year. You've only spent $11.32 this year somehow. You have a $5,000 budget. The budget on the face of it looks reasonable. It's just that you spent so little.
Well, that particular account is for handling, in the event that we have network equipment that's for things that are under $1,000, under the fixed asset. It's for routine replacement of network switches throughout the system for the infrastructure. We also use that account currently for replacing workstation batteries for workstations. And that fluctuates, depending on how many UPSs we have to replace. And these are workstation UPSs, not the large ones like in the computer room or the police department.
Replaced mine.
Yeah, we keep those on stock, and it's when thunder season kicks in, we'll go through a lot of those all at once, and we'll have to reorder.
Okay, the next one's software maintenance, and on the face of it, looks reasonable. $68,455, a budget of $71.6. But you've only spent $16,000 year to date. So you're obviously you have some $50,000 project.
And what is software maintenance?
The software maintenance includes the maintenance for the GEMS financial application, which we just processed that bill just a few weeks ago. So that may not have been reflected in the numbers that you're looking at.
How big was the bill? Just curious.
It's just under $48,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these
That's
are
the biggest
annual
one.
annual bills and annual renewals. There's a
So
you know,
in
a
other
number
words,
of these
this is
items
annual
don't divvy up
renewal
pro rata.
of the proprietary software package that we
Yeah.
pay on an annual basis, $48,000. And what does the GEMS software do?
The GEM software is our accounting system, our general ledger, and all of that.
I'll let it go there. There's some more little ones, but
Anything else?
Well, the big thing we're doing right now is we're consolidating. Paul works on the second floor in his office, and now he's moving down to the first floor with us. I'm sorry. He's moving down in the first floor with us, so now we're all consolidating. We're all going to be in the same space.
Cohabitat.
Cohabitat, correct. So Paul, Steve, and Jenny are all coming downstairs with us and moving all this stuff with it.
And I commend you. I think that's a great thing, just to have that opportunity to cross train, learn what each others are doing, be able to help each other, and more efficient. So thank you.
Because we're going to be cross training both network and software side. We're back end, correct.
Yeah, it originally was all together, and then it split back when we had too many employees. We didn't have enough space, and now that it just makes more sense to bring us all down together.
And certainly, and the cross training is an enrichment for all the employees. I mean, it certainly will broaden their skills, and
Enhances their marketability.
absolutely. Thank you.
Anything else on IT? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Purchasing, where'd John go?
He'll be here.
Wanted to revisit one issue back on the purchasing on this delivery, mail delivery, et cetera. I just wanted to see if council would consider that as a part-time position. I'm still struggling to see how someone could do mail delivery and sorting and be busy 40 hours a week.
I asked that question. I said, well, could the person then do one cycle throughout the enterprise of the city per day? And I don't believe the answer was...
If I could too, and I had a few people remind me at the break of some things that I had neglected. The reason we call it delivery services attendant and it's not the mail person is because they actually facilitate the movement of more than mail around amongst the various city facilities. IT, who they were just here, reminded me that as PCs come and go from them to other people, both actual repairs and things people send back that they send back out, he'll pick up packages and deliver them to other locations, again, internal packages. So, certainly, again, at the will of the council, we can make as much or little of that as you desire. But I do think, given the fact that it gets costed out to the utilities and that it's a relatively small impact to the general fund as opposed to what could be a fairly large impact on both efficiency and the administrative staffing of the other departments, it's worth putting back.
So, I think even the
like.
city clerk could address that too. To me, that's a very important position as to the moving stuff around as well as the mail. You get bogged down into that, it's going to take somebody some hours.
My question is, what occurs when he's on vacation?
Another person in the warehouse actually performs that function for whatever days he's on vacation. But that takes away, they have more coverage there right now too, and that's going.
Do you allocate that cost of that person to all the departments that he serves, or you
We do.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
purchasing?
So purchasing, -1.
Again, the big changes in purchasing at October the 1st, and I think John will be back, were the one we just talked about, as well as the elimination of one senior stock clerk. And beginning on 1 October through the sale of the electric utility, eliminating the general warehouse function for things like public works equipment and supplies, and dialing it back so it's nothing but the electric utility and the water and sewer utility, so that when the electric utility gets sold, the water and sewer warehouse function can either be absorbed entirely into the water and sewer department, or eliminated if Rob thinks it's okay to do sort of just-in-time delivery with a very small amount of stock. And so that's going to take some time, but the idea of phasing that out is to actually close that facility and leave it, and as we talked about earlier, physically bring the purchasing people into the finance department with some cross-training and crossing the lines on some of the things we'll need help with.
And once that warehouse facility is no longer necessary, could that then be leased through the since it is on the airport, it would be leased through the airport enterprise fund?
That is correct.
So that would become a marketable product of the city to be utilized for a business.
It is yeah, it is for the airport. The unfortunate part is it's a design building that you're going to have to find a specialized client because it's there for hurricane standards, and it'd be pretty hard to modify substantially inside. But it will be a marketable item too. And the way the city owns the building, the airport owns the property, and it's my understanding the reversion clause is once we vacate the building, then it becomes property of the airport.
Don't we have records in that same building, Tammy?
Yes, and we are actually looking at taking the training room upstairs across from the attorney's office and putting our records up there. We were looking to see if structurally that can hold the records,
That was my
know.
question.
Yeah.
But at this point, we're working on that. That's the plan.
Structural engineer, if
And
you
part of a large part of those records are finance records, and we've actually, in our movement of the hallway up here, have created a central storage space for our records as well. Not only for what we have now, but anticipating that when we vacate the warehouse, we're going to have a fairly large amount come back in our direction.
Yeah.
And then we're also looking at the city manager's office of potentially being vacated.
Correct.
Yeah, we have a lot of records like from water and sewer that
Right.
we're just storing out there that can go back over there. So I think that hopefully if structurally that upstairs department can handle it, that's what the plan is. And, right now Heather goes out to the warehouse in the morning, so it'll be a lot easier having her here, if I need to call on her to come downstairs other than her way out there. So
Is the space there, that we have in this building adequate?
In City Hall?
we think so.
If it's
with
structurally sound, it'll
yeah,
be
we
the
can,
square footage.
The shelving and everything that we have planned to put up there will work if it can structurally hold it. I wouldn't want it falling in my office.
No, yeah, get rid of the city council, but there's an office on the first floor just back behind the door that's largely vacant for what it's worth. It's a big area.
There's vacant space
There's
all
vacant
over
space.
this.
There's space
Right.
all over.
And also that'll save in electricity, because I know it was air conditioning that space out at the warehouse was costly because the building wasn't created to have that type of usage.
And these budgets reflect 3 months' worth of savings on utilities, et cetera. For that reason, we figure even after the sale of the electric utility, which we were assuming to be April the 1st, it would take us about 3 months to actually physically get out of those buildings and vacate them. So, but yeah, that is the plan. I think the biggest concern in this particular department, I don't know if John's here yet, is that during this in-between phase where we've cut some people out, but we still do have the electric utility, the staffing in the warehouse is going to be very thin for the management of that particular inventory. And so, again, people take a vacation and someone happens to be on vacation for a week and someone's sick. We may have situations where we have to limit the hours, hopefully not, but maybe refuse deliveries, limit the access that the electric utility field personnel have. In other words, you can't just come by at any time of the day. So we're going to work to manage that, and we're also going to revise some of our inventory procedures in conjunction with our auditors. We've done some very thorough piece-by-piece inventories for several years now, but it is legitimate to focus your inventory counts across the year and on those things that have material line item values, and so we're going to have to amend some of those procedures as well. So it's just that in-between phase before we're completely out of the business where we have limited staffing that's going to be a bit challenging for us, and we'll just work through it.
And we can also look for the purchasing manager to step in the event.
does.
Yes,
He drives a forklift and all that with the best of them.
and
So
to handle any of the shortfalls there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just as a curiosity, I see under janitorial services the cut, which I understand. Why do we have janitorial supplies? I don't see that on the other one. We buy janitorial supplies for
28.
We buy janitorial supplies for the janitor service.
Oh, interesting.
You've only spent $5 year to date.
Those may actually be cleaning supplies for the warehouse. I honestly don't know.
There's just a curious.
warehouse as
Yeah, it has it on the warehouse.
And purchasing.
also.
I honestly don't know.
It
That
was
would be a
just a
great question for
curiosity
John.
thing that got my attention. It's
Spent
crazy what gets our
$100 between the
attention.
two.
Right. Yeah. I without John here, I'm sorry. I can't answer that for you, but I can get the answer and get
I
back
think
to you.
you're over budgeted a few $100 if you can.
We don't
again,
want to nickel dime
we
them
try
to death there,
we
but
try to make these nice and round because they go
It
up
was-
and down from year to year. So
it was just a curiosity.
Our job is to nickel and dime this.
Anything else on purchasing? Warehouse, page 30.
If you look under vehicle maintenance, you spent $4,600. It's nickel dime, I suppose, but it looks like 6916 is a closer number. It's what it's been running for years.
You'll notice that all the vehicle maintenance our numbers are different. Those are actually the chargebacks to the various departments from, and I don't know if Monty's here yet, from the fleet management. And what we realized in putting the budget together this year, that in prior years, we had charged out the actual cost of the mechanics based on vehicles and work, but not the overhead. And so we were keeping more costs kind of in the general fund than they should have been. Yeah, so we did some restructuring of how we cost out the vehicle maintenance to the very department.
Because I noticed that across the board, the vehicle maintenance had dropped fairly
Or
steep.
gone up for some people, and the actual net bottom line of fleet management that's left in the general fund is much smaller, because we realized that it wasn't appropriate just to have the direct cost costed out. We needed to cost out the overhead as well. So that's caused some ups and downs in vehicle maintenance budgets across the whole budget. So.
Under finance, we have expenses for both cleaning and laundry and uniforms and clothing. In previous budget hearings, I've asked the question about those, and the answer was primarily that those were required based on safety. Different types of jobs needed safety boots and things like that, which I could agree with for the warehouse personnel. But I was also told that a lot of times they were individuals who interacted with the public, and therefore they needed to, look a presentable manner. For the warehouse, where are we seeing cleaning and laundry coming in? Who from the warehouse would be required to be wearing a uniform?
Some of those people that wear uniforms, it also is predicated on the union contracts as well in terms of who we supply uniforms to.
But the
warehouse personnel.
You should have never put it into a union contract if it wasn't necessary that they wear a uniform.
And that's accurate. I mean, and we can say that we don't require uniforms and mark those out, and that could be done
as part of the
That's
negotiation.
the first time in 3 years that someone from the city has said that to me when I've asked the questions about uniforms. Yeah. I've been told over and over and over that it's in the union contracts, there's nothing we can do.
And it is in union contracts, but we can say we no longer require for particular departments.
It's required if you require a uniform, correct. It's required that we pay for it.
That's correct.
But if we don't, thank you. I appreciate that comment. It's the first time I've heard it.
Yep.
So you'd like us to re-examine whether it's appropriate for the warehouse people to have uniforms?
It's really necessary.
And I understand the safety. I mean, the guys need the steel-tip boats and that
Some
kind of
need
stuff.
to be flame retardant and stuff like that.
We'll have a look at that again. I'm with John not here. I can't really.
Anything else on warehouse at page 30?
Are you? You want to? Got anything to say about that, or the uniforms for the warehouse personnel? Is there a safety reason, or just the boots? Okay.
The boots, yeah.
Do we have cleaning and laundry for safety reasons?
No, that's for the uniform.
They have uniforms. I think, let's make sure we bring this full circle. They have uniforms. That's why they're budgeted. But I think what you're saying is if we say that they don't have to have uniforms, then we don't have to supply them, and therefore we can amend this budget line item. Am I on the right page?
As long as the modification to our contract would be possible, because I believe we have a contract for the uniforms.
Oh, yes, and they are. It's my understanding that the contracts for uniforms are.
Nothing else for warehouse. We move to planning and development.
No, it's public works, engineering, and survey. Why it is, I don't know, but it is.
Why do you get that? On 31, I get planning and development.
Third page 39.
Our agenda is different
okay.
than these.
Sorry, for public works, engineering, and survey.
Hi, Monty.
Page 39.
More or less.
Hi, Monty.
I like that other side. That other side was a lot more fun. And I'm glad you guys are reusing things. That's a good job. On the other side is some things about a park.
Good afternoon.
Want to get the microphone?
Just a couple comments before we get started. Our budget that we're going to look at today was put together with the 10.9% directive, and we were close. We got to 9.2%. We had a little difference in the way we calculated the pension changes, but Cindy and I worked through that, and the overall is 9.2% reduction, down 10 positions in the general fund from last year. That cut follows a steady budget reduction in public works since 07 and 08. If you compare the general fund budget against 07 and 08, we have about a 28.5% reduction in budget dollars and about a 37% reduction in staffing levels. And you can see that on the charts that I've provided for you in your packets and here for the audience to see as well. But during the ongoing staff reductions, we've investigated and implemented methods to improve efficiency and maintain service levels in our essential operations. It was accomplished by cross-training employees, restructuring service routes, upgrading equipment, investigating contract services, disposing of underutilized vehicles, and implementing some time-saving techniques. It should be noted that today's Public Works Department was created in 2005 by combining two previous complete departments, Public Works and Engineering and General Maintenance Services. That combination of the two departments allowed a reduction to the city as a whole, a reduction of a department head, and 4 administrative assistant positions. The staff budget reductions to date have not resulted in a noticeable decline in service levels. But with the proposal of this year of 10 positions, there will be areas where service declines may be noticed. In each of our divisions, those response times to customer service and value-added services will be diminished to some point, and most noticeable will be our grounds maintenance service intervals. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions, or we can move through the budget however you desire.
Yes, as far as grounds maintenance service intervals, I guess my concern is, are we staffed in our grounds maintenance for peak periods or for the norm? Obviously, during season when the grass isn't growing, we're every 2 weeks they mow the lawn. Now in the summertime where you turn around and your grass is up to here, the needs are significantly different.
That's a good statement. And you'll look years ago in our budget, we used to budget some part-time positions and actually staff up in the summertime to add to that additional workload. We have stopped doing that. Again, we've changed the way we've done some things. The grounds maintenance manager and I go out at least once a month and try to evaluate all of our areas to see if there's ways we can reduce the maintenance. You'll see some of our park areas where we've removed a lot of the split rail fencing that's real time consuming to weed eat around all those. That's just one example of the things that we do. We've changed plant material from, we used to use a lot of a hedge material called Eleagnus. In the summertime, it'll grow about a foot a week. We're replacing that with some slower growing materials. It's a little bit of money up front, but once you do it, the maintenance intervals can be lessened. But back to that point, Councilmember Turner, we have one staff size that we keep all year now. We don't have any part-time help. What we do is we schedule our project work in the slow-growing season, where we do our mulching and any of those landscape type projects. We do that in the off season when the growing is slower, and then we're as fast as we can do for maintenance in the faster growing season in the summertime.
This suggestion, why don't we start on page 40 and work our way through the units that are in here, or whatever page you want.
I have one question. You had mentioned some replacement of material with slower growing and less maintenance, and I applaud you for that. We've spoken on that for the last couple of years. And a couple of years ago, we talked about the capability of using peanut grass, which has been used successfully on some of the commercial projects in town, needs very little maintenance, only mowing twice a year or so, and the water levels are decreased. Any thought to using that in medians and
We're
areas?
looking at using it. If the meeting I can draw your attention to is behind the public shopping center in Miracle Mile on State Road 60. Behind there, we're looking at.
We took out some grass type material that was there.
Grass had some issues with some of the soil conditions, and we're looking at using the peanut there. You have to be careful, as you know, you can't use it in any real pedestrian areas because it doesn't take pedestrian traffic very well. But we're still looking at putting that back in there, and hopefully that would be something we do later on.
Okay, just an idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Going item by item, Monty, down on the operating expenses contracts.
Are we looking at
page 40?
Okay. This is.
Would you go through your exhibits?
No, that's fine. I just wanted everybody to be aware of the staffing level. I think it's pretty dramatic the way it shows the slope on that
That's
line.
a good demonstration.
Okay. Engineering.
on Section 2, operating expenses, other contractors, what are you cutting out? That's a pretty big cut. What are we going to do without?
Well, we're going to do as much as we can with our in-house folks, and we just haven't had the experience.
You've been doing outside engineering contract work? Or?
We've had some instances where we've used outside engineers for things that we don't have specialties in. We don't have structural engineers on staff.
Oh, okay.
And
I see where you're going.
Yeah.
I see where you're going.
About 627.
Okay.
And we wanted to more accurately reflect what we were doing in there. But this is a small division. It's down another 2 positions from last year. There'll only be 4 people left, 2 in surveying and 2 in engineering.
So those people are, David is part of it?
David Gay is in survey, and he has 1 surveyor in the field now that serves
Don't
as a
get rid of
surveyor.
David. He's got too much tribal knowledge.
And Bill Messersmith and Matt Mitz are other 2 that are remaining in engineering.
Looking to get it done.
Well, as we've seen the slowdown in planning and development reviews that we do for Tim McGarry, we feel like we can continue to get that done with the folks we have on staff. For the good news is those are starting to pick up again, and we're starting to see an uptick of those reviews. Those have always and will always be our top priority to get those in and out, so that the private sector, when they're trying to get a paperwork or permit done, that we're not holding them up. And our projects have been held back because of capital improvement funds. We have not had those dollars, so we're pretty confident that this staffing level will be good for us for this fiscal year.
I will say, that I'm pleased with the staff level and looking at our benchmark areas and other cities that having this department at this level was appropriate.
Let me ask you a specific question. Software maintenance is a new item this year. I don't see it on the general ledger. So $10,803, and it wasn't prior year. Just, what are you doing?
I'm going to ask Don, is that the
That's our
allocation
drafting
of the-
software. Every 3 years we have to renew our licenses, so
Okay.
that's why it's in this year.
Thank you, sir.
In terms of the major goals and challenges, you mentioned that platting portions of Aviation Boulevard is what's that goal about? It's the very last item on your major goals for this department.
We have David Gay has been working on a right-of-way plat for Aviation Boulevard, so that if that project ever comes back again, he'll be a little bit ahead of the curve on that.
Well, we are expecting that. Isn't that in the county budget for the MPO to?
It is not. That project has been removed.
What is the project? Explain the project.
Aviation Boulevard project was to improve the traffic capacity of Aviation Boulevard between 43rd Avenue and US 1.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been the first phase. The second phase would have been from 43rd Avenue out to 66th Avenue. Due to some funding constraints, the county has removed that from their 5-year CIP. And I think the only thing that would happen on that project in that area is the intersection of 43rd and 26th, because the county is moving forward with improvements to 43rd Avenue from State Road 60 northbound.
One concern that I have with a depletion of the engineering and survey department is if, in fact, the All Aboard Florida project is approved in its plans right now to put the second railroad track in, and the city is required to make any improvements to the crossings throughout our downtown and throughout the city. And my concern would be that the engineering department would have a greatly increased amount of work necessary in order to work with them as the railroad tracks go through our entire city.
And if that comes about, we'll have to address that when we get to it. But with it being an unknown, we'll deal with it as best we can if it materializes.
Okay.
Tracy, do you have any idea where their approvals are? I mean, it sounded like it was going to happen.
It's from their standpoint, if in fact they have received the right-of-way permit to go from from Cocoa all the way over to the airport alongside the B line, that's all they needed because they own the land where the railroad is now. They have all capability of putting another track in there, regardless of what the city would say in terms of doing that. We have no voting, no mechanism by which to control their actions, what their property. And their answer to me when I asked them how they had that capability was exactly what he just said. We were here first. We were here before the city of Vero Beach. We own that property.
What they told us.
I believe they were talking about April 15 that they would be operational.
No, they're planning on putting a second track.
I understand, but they were talking about a fairly short time span.
Well, they've got to relay all that. This used to be a two-way, two sets of tracks out here, and they still have the same right-of-way for it. They've got to lay all that new track, and that's damn sure not going to be.
So we don't feel like it can happen in this budget year.
No.
April 15th, but not the coming year.
I'd like to see what they got under the hat to do that.
I just want to make sure that in bringing this up that we are aware as a city of the increased needs of the engineering department if in fact this goes forward and the city chooses to make improvements to the crossings in order to make it a quiet zone so we do not have the 32 train whistles a day zooming through our entire downtown corridor and scaring all our snowboards.
What for the two of you? Since you know and I don't, what would the improvements be to the crossings to get the whistles down?
They have to change, as my understanding, and I'm not an expert in that, but they have to change the notification further away. The gates come down to make sure they're closed, and those kind of safety improvements that would need to be done.
That we would have to pay for.
They will not help. And also, you may want to take a look at the new Publix's on 53rd. You can see what kind of improvements are at that crossing, and that may be similar to what we would have to do with the overhead and the barriers that are upgraded.
I can tell you, you can do all the improvements you want to, but getting them to actually not blow that whistle is another issue. The county has on its books an ordinance prohibiting them from blowing at certain times of night, and there's no compliance whatsoever. And good Lord help you if you can find a way to do it.
When 32 trains a day are zooming through downtown 60 to 80 miles an hour.
There's something inbred about that arm going.
The reality is
conditioned reflex
goes through 7 counties. I mean,
there's no way to tell which counties have the ordinances and which don't. They're not going to memorize them.
I think the only way to stop that is to have an overpass or underpass.
Yes.
Anytime that engineer sees that little W on the side of the tracks, he's going to blow that whistle.
His hand goes up to that. Okay, Public Works Streets.
Okay, the Streets Division is down one position from last year, and we have rolled 3 of the previous divisions into one since had the same manager. Steve Fuller has managed those 3 divisions for many years, and it's the streets functions, the stormwater functions, and the traffic functions. And he's been real proactive in, now that we have fewer people than we have in the past, he's training them across different lines. Since we don't have those specific individual functions, somebody that could have been doing striping last week will be operating a dump truck for him in one of the other functions this week. So that's what we've done there, and if there's any specifics to any of the line items.
If you look at hospitalization insurance, it actually went up while your head count went down. It's 140.
Above the line, I'll have to refer to Cindy for those.
What's it say in the ledger?
That was clever.
There's about 17% increase in health insurance costs programmed into this budget. In addition, what we did was we updated the proposed health insurance costs based on the current census as to the plan that people have actually chosen, and we do that every year. So there is, from year to year, where there's movement in staffing, there's movement in plan levels as well. So in some cases, even though the average cost subtracting those employees, the 17% plus the average cost in that department going up made it an increase and not a decrease.
How about the operating salaries? And really, I'm not questioning the number. I'm asking what the assumption is. I mean,
it's a reduction of 1.
One, yeah.
No, it's not that. Are you budgeting current experience or something else other than current experience as far as cost?
When we do the operating salaries line items, we start with the actual staffing, and then the department heads mark it up if it's a specific person that is going to come or go. If it's a vacant position that will be filled, we try to budget it at the midpoint of that position, but we have it reflect at any point in time, as close as we can, the reality of the staffing and the assumption of no, at this point, no increases in salaries.
And you answered the question with the last sentence.
And to the point, this group itself has lost 10 people in that 5-year period.
Which still begs the issue that, we were way overstaffed, in my opinion. I think this was like looking at water and sewer, where we had twice the number of people as industry average in the department. So I'm afraid that argument doesn't get too far with me. But looking at our benchmarking areas, I'm still a bit perplexed in having 17 people to handle 103 miles of paved roads compared to what the other cities are. It still seems that we are overloaded in this department for the area and the streets and runoff areas that we have.
Well,
our geographic area.
Again, they just don't take care of the paved roads. If you'll drive around the city, and I'm real proud of this, if you'll look at our drainage system, the drainage ditches behind the homes, mainly on the mainland side of our community, are what's relied on for their drainage. And those are clean and clear. City manager can tell you we responded to a complaint 2 weeks ago from a gentleman that had 1 inch of water standing in his ditch, and that was unacceptable to him. He has since been called, the city manager has, and has been told, thank you for taking care of that for us. That's the level of service you won't find anywhere in any community that borders Vero Beach.
No, and is that reasonable, though? That's what I'm trying to say. I was going to say, let's be reasonable in the service,
It it sure felt to be reasonable from the citizen, and he was pretty adamant in his requests, and we try to deal with those before they get to the city manager's level, and certainly before they get to your level.
Yeah.
But they also they do our stormwater systems. They help us with the installation of our sedimentation boxes. We have a crew in there that actually does those, the ones that are the size we can install. We've built miles of sidewalk with this group in the last few years. So I don't want to characterize them as just being the guys that go out and fix the potholes. They do soup to nuts of what we see and what the public sees. And again, I say this every year, we judge our success when the phone doesn't ring. Because public works facilities and services are not noticed when they're done the way people expect them. They're only noticed when they're not done that way. But we will offer the service level that you give us the employees to do that with, and we're pretty comfortable that our track record over the last 5 years shows that we can continue to offer an acceptable service level with the staffing that we're at today.
I have no question.
There were in that group there were 27. Today there's 17.
Just also to let you know, I went out with one of the crews, that lady that was over on the mainland that was having the drainage problem in front of her house. Now I personally spent about 4 hours with her, and the 2-man crew that was also trying to correct her problem, which was again the 1 inch of water, and the pipe was too small going under her driveway, which we didn't replace, but we cleaned out the ditch. That is sort of an expectation on the level of service. There's no question we could have said to that lady, our drainage is working, and walked away. But it takes man hours if we're going to give that much attention to detail.
Once again, I'm looking at a still site. You got 17 people for 11 square miles of roads, and I think that count should be closer to about 14. I think trying to keep 17 people busy 40 hours a week. I can't see it.
What's not uncommon in other places, and this is just an observation, though, is that the stormwater function is actually not part of the general fund. It's as part of a separate fund, and in many cases funded by a separate stormwater assessment. The level of stormwater work that I see here in this budget and in this municipality is, kind of far and above what I've seen in other places, and certainly, again, normally in a separate fund funded with other revenue sources. The other thing is we have some general fund revenue sources, for instance, a local option gas tax, that are dedicated to be spent on roads and right-of-ways and stormwater as well. And those revenue sources exist only to support these kinds of functions. So my only comment being that sometimes if you look, example Sebastian, right? Or is it mingled? It's not mingled into their general fund, but it has another revenue source.
Separate revenue.
And so sometimes it's hard to compare.
This is one of those things where how do you want Vero Beach? I mean, this is one of the basic. I don't want to look like Melbourne. I don't want to look like Sebastian. I think this. Well, my point is, I don't want to look like some other town. I want to look like Vero Beach. This is what makes Vero Vero. It's why people come back here all the time because it looks so nice. Cosmetics counts.
Do we need somebody making signs in the city? How often are we striping roads? Once again, this is stuff I'm asking. I was going to say, we have people full-time to do these functions.
Well, so that it's clear, we don't have somebody doing those individual functions full-time anymore. We've eliminated...
Anymore. I think that's a key thing, right?
Council's directions are loud and clear, and we're doing the best we can to still provide those services that we have perceived that the council wants us to provide for its citizens. If you give me, through the city manager, a different direction, we're happy to implement the policies of this city council through the city manager.
I've got no problem exploring the ideas of paring things down, but it just seems like we're experimenting with so many different things on whether they work or not. I mean, we experimented with outsourcing the grass. Good grief! I'm sorry, the city looks like. I don't want to.
That's only a small portion of the grass that you got to remember.
It might be only a small portion, but it's doggone noticeable. I see it in the rights way. I see it in the parks.
The calls as well.
I mean, it's absolutely horrendous.
During rainy season.
But the point is that if we're going to experiment with something like this, we've got to at least have some kind of a measurable goal to see if it even works.
So the key is saving money. And for example, on the mowing, I mean, it was a $50,000 saving.
Let's go to the mowing when we get to the mowing.
Okay.
I agree with
But on the engineering and contracting out, what we will do is if this staffing level is using engineering surveying, if we need a specialized engineer, you'll start seeing a growth pattern in that.
Well, I'm happy with the way it is.
I would move slowly on this so we don't all of a sudden end up with a huge contrast in services and then we can't go back.
Monty, one of the line items on streets is a significant decrease in vehicle maintenance. That is not putting at jeopardy our vehicles, is it?
No, we did a inventory of our vehicles, and we eliminated some vehicles that were no longer needed. Through the help of John O'Brien, we've surplused those through the warehouse. So we've done that. That was one of the goals I gave this manager for last year, and he accomplished that very well.
I have a specific question, and you will have a specific answer. The second to last item, swale side. I'm sure you have a place for it. Where is the place?
When we do any grading project of someone's with a drainage complaint, if we regrade the swale, it has to be resodded. So that's kind of been a historical number that we've used.
Okay. Anything else on Public Works? Do you have anything, Monty, on the 5-year plan?
Well, I think we haven't went through GIS yet, have we?
GIS, we have.
And we're doing general.
I understand we have GIS. I'm merely asking if
Mayor,
you do
we
have
have some paving and things coming up.
Where is that in here?
That's actually in the 5-year capital plan, and that's actually on the agenda for tomorrow to have a discussion about 311 and
I didn't bring
304
that
both.
booklet.
So,
Yeah, there it is.
Under Public Works, GIS.
GIS group, we have limited a position in that group. There are 2 people there now between Jim Kirkpatrick and his technician. A lot of their work is done for our water and sewer utility. If you look at your budget, you'll see interfund services, the last item under operating expenses. That's the amount of work that we do for water and sewer. That will stay the same as last year, so this budget has a substantial reduction from what it was last year.
Any questions on page 44?
Just to comment on GIS, that is one of the functions that is used by all the departments of the city, and it's important to note that, especially if you go to water and sewer. Excuse me. And so it is a farmed out type of service being provided throughout the.
GIS is used a lot from the general fund side by Tim McGarry in planning, and we assist the police department with some mapping and data points for some of their crime data and statistics.
Any questions on page 44? Line items? Nope. Let's move over to ground maintenance then. This is the group that makes Vero look like Vero instead of somewhere else.
This is the group that I have questions about.
Be happy to talk about it. Grounds maintenance has a reduction of 4 employees proposed, 33 last year, 29 this year. 3 of those are groundskeeper position and 1 is a park attendant position. 2 of the groundskeeper positions were eliminated when we implemented the mowing services contract, and that was done at a city council meeting back in April. We had put this out to bid with the hopes of implementing it at the start of the budget year, but because of the savings shown, I talked to the city manager and we agreed to go ahead and start it in June to realize some of those savings in this current fiscal year. With any new contract, there's an initial learning curve for the contractor. He started June the 1st, which is the peak of our growing season.
Right, and it was and we all of a sudden got hit by rains, which caused massive amounts of growth.
Close to 10 inches of rain in that first month he started.
Which the rain does 2 things. We have to remember that is make the grass grow farther, and there's less time he can be out there actually mowing it. So it's double whammy.
Correct. He only was able to service about 50% of the sites in June, and that will be reflected in his payment for the first month. We are working with him, and we have high hopes that in July he'll be up to speed, know the routes, have the proper equipment, which he didn't have initially. He actually destroyed 2 mowers out at Dodgertown when he started on the old golf course out
He
there.
destroyed his own or ours?
These are contract
mowers.
Just wanted to make sure.
He comes and does it all, and we pay him for what he's done.
Let's talk about some of the areas. If they do Dodgertown, it looks Dodgertown's soon going to
Get your microphone.
I'm sorry.
We'll share
Thank
that
you very much, Mayor. If you look at Dodgertown at the old golf course, it's soon going to need bush hogging. It hadn't been done, I don't know when.
Well, I think Dodgertown was only being done every 4 to 6 months as it was.
Well, we service it again more in the wintertime when everything else wasn't growing as high, and then we tried to service it monthly throughout the rest of the year.
Okay.
The bush hog is what he's going to use next to get it down to a manageable level, and quite frankly, once it's bush hogged, it looks reasonably well kept, like any other vacant property that's not being utilized through those heavy growing season times. But what this contract was for our non-irrigated turf areas, not our irrigated parks. And some of the neighborhood parks are irrigated, some are not. The ones that are not irrigated typically have bahia grass, which grows the fastest in the summertime, as opposed to the St. Augustine. We're still doing all the St. Augustine mowing in our parks such as JC and South Beach and those Charles Park and Young Park on the mainland. But the non-irrigated parks, Jacoby Park and Piece of Pie, and actually the main area at Riverside Park, the big open field where the Boston Pops concert was held years ago, that's a non-irrigated turf area. We actually had the contractor put that up on his schedule to have that mowed before the 4th of July event.
But, the reality is Piece of Pie and Jacoby, and I've had a voter come to me and say, you can look at Charles Park as an example. You can look at you can look out around the museum and it looks good, but our 2 parks look like the Dickens, and they do look like the Dickens. I mean, there's grass this tall for children to play in. So, I mean, say what we want, it's unsatisfactory.
And Councilmember Winger, I totally agree with that, and it's frustrating for us until we get these service delivery levels where they meet the spec that we put out, and they don't currently. I can tell you that since we've undertaken this contract, our grounds maintenance manager is spending roughly half of her time managing this contract, trying to get this work done. There are constant emails between her and the owners of the business, and she's out daily making sure what has gotten done is to the best they can do for right now. We are going to go through July, and if it doesn't meet the specs, we're going to be recommending that we move up to the next contractor on the list. That's an increase of about $15,000, but the work has to be done. And if it can't get done with this low bid, to meet the specs that we put out, and we put them out so that grass at those parks would not look like it does today. But so far, the first month was not acceptable. Hopefully, the second month will be acceptable because it was a considerable savings to our budget.
What was the savings?
Savings is in a little in excess of $50,000.
That'll work. Monty, educate me here. Down at the next to the bottom, it says park maintenance income. Do we actually have income off of the parks?
Yes, we do. We do bill for some of the work that we do. We bill for less than we used to. We used to bill recreation for any park activity
Oh, I
that
see
we
what
mowed.
you're doing. Yeah.
Now we
okay.
only bill them for the active
I see what
parks.
you're doing.
The passive
Yeah.
parks were all put back in, Cindy, last year into Public Works budget?
They were because I'm sorry. Yeah, in 11-12, you'll see that number was $1.1 million, and that's when the recreation was billed for about $1 million worth or $900,000 worth of parks.
Okay.
So that's actually an interfund charge, if you
That's
will.
That's okay. Thank you.
Well, I heard what you said, but I'm going to keep asking. And the reality is, contracting this out so far and saving $50,000 hasn't worked. It's not satisfactory. That's the reality. It may work later on. I don't know.
It's a contractor compliance issue. I think there's no question there.
And the weather occurred. I mean, the weather created a problem, I believe, that.
But overall,
Didn't affect the other
Vero
grounds.
Beach's cost for
affect the other
maintaining
grounds
grounds is still below. We still maintain less acreage per employee, than the norm. The norm would be about 10.5 acres, and for our employee, we were maintaining about 9.7.
When we did that benchmarking, we looked at those, and we're a little above or a little below the average in number of acres maintained, but you got to look at what kind of acres you're maintaining as well. We have a lot of acres that are improved. Again, I'll point to the level of service when we have control over it is pretty high. We also benchmarked the dollars spent per acre, and we were one of the better ones of the benchmark cities when we looked at that as well.
Just out of curiosity, with South Beach, doesn't the county half own that?
Yes, sir.
Shouldn't they be paying for part of the groundskeeping?
Well, I don't think we have many options. The answer is we can write them a letter and request that.
Well, that would
we have
correct
historically.
the benchmarking if the county would pay their tab.
Well, we could write the letter. We haven't been successful in the last few letters we've written. And so, the options are not very good. But yes, they do.
There you go, being realistic again, Jay.
But, it's sort of like the statistics that we all have agreed to, that between 60 and 70% of the users of our facilities are outside the city as well.
Sure.
Anything else on ground maintenance? Let's go over to administration.
Just quickly, this is another area that will change with the change of our assumption about the sale of the electric utility halfway through the year, because you noticed his interfund income went down a little bit because of some of the facilities for electric utility that he maintains. So those will be put back in.
Okay.
Mayor, the administration division is where Don and myself are cost-centered, along with our clerical staff, and we made a reduction of 1 in this group this year.
noticed under janitorial services, yours went up, everybody else's went down, Monty.
All of the billing for, as I understand it, for Public Works in the janitorial is cost centered to the administrative division. Is that correct,
Okay.
Don?
That's correct. And the new contract.
The new janitorial contract, that's the increase
Yeah,
there.
the new janitorial contract, the increase that was citywide, almost all of it went into Public Works.
We have talked to John O'Brien, and one of the things we proposed is doing the janitorial services at our Public Works facility ourselves and saving those dollars. We've talked to the staff, and they're willing to pick up those activities. So,
Under administration, I see you've got reduction of one. In that staff, don't you have 2 assistants now, and yourself and Mr. Dexter?
yes, we have an administrative assistant here in City Hall. That's a senior administrative assistant that helps with prepare all of our contracts, all the agenda items. The other administrative assistant is located at their Public Works compound, takes care of all the payroll functions and accounts payable.
Because certainly isn't that one function that we could combine somehow? You know, these days with computers that you are handling a lot of things on your own, I was going to say, I would say one assistant for Public Works should be sufficient.
Well, I have to tell you that I feel that 2 clerical assistants in a department has 95 people to handle all the things that go along with the workload and payroll from those 95 people, and the one taking care of all the professional services that we do is pretty close. We had 3 last year. We have 2 people doing what 6 people were doing 4 or 5 years ago.
I would think a ratio of 1 to 50 is pretty good comparing it with all of the other departments. That's pretty good.
Hey, let me ask you another question. Yeah. You maintain 2 domiciles. After the electric is sold, at some point in time, is there any plan to get more people in one building, wherever the building is?
We've kicked that around a lot internally, and our functions are twofold. Our maintenance function has very little contact with the general public as a customer other than providing that service. That's what is centered out at our Public Works compound. That's where the bulk of these employees come in every morning, get their assignments, and go out. That's the Public Works facility located at the Airport West property. The professional services are offered out of this building. They have a lot of interaction with planning and with the public who comes into planning for some questions for a development review process. Planning sends them over here to see us. It's a convenience factor for them. I've struggled with, could you take the fewer group of employees, which are here at City Hall, and move them out to the compound? I have space to do that. We've looked at it. We can move them out there. But it's, to me, an inconvenience for the general public. And we're trying to provide that as best we can.
Would it save anything?
I don't know that it would save anything other than we would have that facility out there fully utilized. If we moved out here, City Hall would have more vacant space.
So we should all move out there with you.
You're more than welcome to come any day you'd like, and I'll give you the grand tour.
Tammy?
Yes.
We had talked a little while ago about whether the second floor was capable of supporting the amount of paper if we move the public records over here. What if engineering was moved upstairs to that extra space? Thereby, they would be very close to the planning and zoning, which they're using. I mean, I know people come into the city to talk to planning and zoning, and they're having to go up there and then go downstairs and then go back, and it creates a movement of people. And that may be a way to put the 2 departments very close together, share some type of administrative services as well. It's something that we may want to think about amongst you all. It's not an idea for the budget.
And Tammy and we've talked about the training room, and as soon as we get an answer, we haven't actually hired anybody.
But what she's saying now is going up there.
but we'll have to make sure if that place is not structurally sound to do that.
Actually, where I was going was not necessarily the training room, but I was going into the city manager's office. We've talked about moving them downstairs. And if you were right next door, then you're right there with the planning department to have engineering there.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense.
Have more people than would fit in Jim's space.
I don't know
Well,
that I
Jim's
want to work
got-
in that office
I
again.
mean-
I'm sorry.
The big office could be split up. How's that?
And then putting the records down where engineering is.
That's my idea at this point.
I think that's a good idea.
It's anyway. You guys talk about it.
We'll
Talk
take a look
amongst
at it.
yourselves.
That's a great idea.
Okay, are we still on page 48?
I was thinking the same thing.
Any
I was
other
afraid you were
questions
going
on
to make a joke.
administration? Hearing none, let's move over to fleet management.
Fleet management, a reduction of 1 from last year. It's down 3 positions from 5 years ago. This division takes care of about 200 light vehicles, which would be trucks, cars, and cargo vans, 63 medium and heavy-duty trucks, 47 pieces of heavy equipment, about, in all total, 420-some pieces of vehicular equipment, including trailers, and then about 415 pieces of small equipment for all of our divisions, chainsaws, concrete saws, those kind of things.
And this includes our police vehicles?
We take care of our police vehicles here. Yes, we do.
Tell me about the enterprise discussions.
We are, and we have included in the budget, and you'll see that as we talk to everybody here through your process. We have gone out and talked to a company that can provide some preventative maintenance services on a contract basis, and they would use local garages to do that. But the biggest thing that this offers us in using them, it lets us get our average age of our fleet, which is now approaching 11 years. About 9. It would allow us to get the average age of those vehicles down, and what that does more than anything else is starts to reduce the vehicle maintenance cost if you have a newer fleet. And they have a lease purchase program that we are investigating. Cindy's been helping us with that for about 6 months, and we've included that in the budget. And that'll start letting us have newer vehicles, less maintenance, and hopefully we'll see a trend that some of these vehicle maintenance costs will start to come down, and we can look at this staffing level more each year as we get new vehicles. The bad news is,
Would that include police vehicles?
so far we've not found a way. They don't want to accept the liability of doing that. But it's going to take us some number of years at about 25 vehicles a year on average to get this cycled through. So it'll take a little bit of time, but once we get that, then it'll be a recurring turnover of those vehicles, and there'll be a newer fleet with less maintenance and also better fuel efficiency in those vehicles.
Would this be a local company providing this contract?
They have an office here.
They do. It's a national company, but they would contract out with local garages to do the oil changes, preventative maintenance.
They are in the car rental business, and so they contract out a lot of their maintenance, and they would just include the fleet as part of that. But we still,
I do like the fact that this would include a component of our local business sectors.
this would not get us out of the chainsaw, the trailers, and those type of things, and police cars.
And just one more thing, I want to. Our fleet manager and his staff, they're really good of keeping our vehicles in good working order based on the age of the fleet. But they also look at some new things. And Councilmember Carroll, we've talked about this, about the use of alternative fuels. And just within the last month, we have had several meetings with some members of the propane industry, and we're looking at and had some demos of some police cars that are actually propane fueled. The challenge is being able to locate that alternate fuel tank in the trunk of the police car, as police cars have gotten smaller over the years. Safety-wise, they can do it, but with the equipment that they carry, their trunks are pretty
Shotguns and all.
pretty full.
Propane tanks and shotguns don't go
Is there
But a lot of other cities have done it, and there's a substantial savings in the fuel bill. So
We talked about years ago. We talked about propane lawnmowers and that capability of the savings. And there is some utilization of propane at the county level at this point, I believe.
right, and we talked about it was hard to retrofit, but
Right.
new mowers could be done with that. But if we get on a propane program where we have more than just the mower use, the propane companies will actually set up a fueling station for you.
us, right?
Yeah. And we're also investigating some of the use of that in our solid waste vehicles too, as not a complete fuel source, but a source that increases the efficiency or the burn of the diesel fuel.
It would be nice if we could give a call to the county, and I know, sorry, hate to push you into that. But
We've talked to them. Our garage fleet manager has talked to theirs. We're
okay, good.
And
That's
Waste
great.
Pro has already got a farm down in St. Lucie County, and it's pretty impressive down there with what they do.
Money,
sorry.
two items. If you look at the third one down, contract painting services, you haven't spent anything this year whatsoever, and you spent $54.05. What is contracting painting services, and why do we need $8,000?
Years ago, excuse me, turn it off. Years ago, the city had their own paint shop in the garage, and it was not cost efficient to maintain that, where we painted vehicles when they were damaged. Now we contract that work out. It's a function of vehicle damage.
I understand that, but for 3 years now, you haven't spent all the money. You did go down $2,000, but you're still. I'm not quibble about it, but
No, I understand. We could lower it if we don't need it, or if we do need it, we come back for a budget amendment.
Just a minute.
okay. A bigger one, actually, the biggest one on the sheet, the 372,000 vehicle parts and supplies. The year before last was 352. This year's 215, which would come out to 328. So it looks like, unless you need more parts this year or they're more expensive, you're spending $50,000 more than your elapsed rate, either this year or last year.
And I'll let Don speak to that. He worked with Jimmy as putting these together, but I think they also did figure in some cost increases that they were.
We did. This year the budget is $388,000, and that is prorated out for all of the parts that are used throughout the city with all the vehicles. And the upcoming year that we have in front of you, we reduced it about $16,000. Part of that savings is from T&D going away. Part of that is from enterprise vehicles with this program coming into place where we'd have less maintenance. So the total of that is about $16,000. Plus, we've gotten rid of a few vehicles too.
Well, with that said, though, you've only spent $215 or $216 year to date.
Could
That's a monthly.
Could it be some of the parts haven't hit yet?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's.
I don't think
We
it's-
don't go out and buy parts just to have them on hand. We buy them as they're needed. So that could go up and down a little bit on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah, I don't think that's a straight pro rata basis. Plus, there's an allocation journal entry too. So.
Anything else?
The only other
Public
thing
Works Fleet Management.
we talked about this earlier, but I think if you look at this number down at the bottom, you can see clearly the effect of us going in. Now, we have all these costs, and then down here at that very last line, interfund services labor is where they get allocated out to the various departments for the maintenance of the vehicles. You can see that's increased tremendously by Monty recognizing and us undertaking full costing to make sure that it's costed out as much as it should be. The net effect of fleet management on the general fund is only $165,000. And the rest of it is for support to the other enterprise funds.
So the 975. The 975 at the bottom.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's the amount that we will be recovering full cost accounting to the enterprise funds and other customers.
There's also another component to this that we'll talk about when we look at general fund construction, and that is the capital purchase part of rolling over and replacing the fleet. And it kind of goes hand in hand with something we did throughout this budget. You saw in all these departments in the general fund last year various capital outlays. Wherever possible, we've pushed the expenditures for capital outlays into the 1 cent sales tax fund, where they comply with the required uses of those funds by Florida statute, so that we're not using operational money for capital expenditures. And that's the case with this fleet replacement as well. So we can talk about that some more tomorrow.
Public Works, Facilities Management.
I'm sorry, there was one other item I wanted to bring to the public's attention, and that is that one of the aspects of fleet management is actually the dumpsters throughout the solid waste division, and those can easily be be backed into and have a lot of maintenance necessary.
Glad you brought that up. The fleet group does. We have one person on staff that is a welder and also does some mechanic duties as well. But most of his welding skills are used on dumpster repair. And over the 4th of July, we had a dumpster fire at one of our apartment complexes. Some of the residents thought it was a great place to shoot their fireworks off, so they put them in the dumpster, and the dumpster caught on fire. And so we're working through that with our damage assessment right now. I just found that out this morning.
So those 657 dumpsters at facilities throughout our city are actually the property of the city?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Page 52, Fleet Management.
Facilities
Management, excuse me.
And Mr. Mayor, this is the only one I did not have a staff reduction in. This group is 7 employees that take care of all the city's facilities. It's down 5 positions since that 5-year level at 2009. Most recently, their work has been noticed in City Hall and helping Cindy get her offices reorganized and get ready for purchasing's move over here. They offer a service to the city that takes care of not only the city's facilities where we have our offices, but they take care of our parks, buildings, the river house, any of those structures that the city owns. They take care of those. So I was not able to recommend a reduction in that staff this time.
If you look at you have contract painting again now for another $12,000. You spent 0 this year too. So it's the second time we see contract painting, a total of $20,000 between the 2 accounts. You so far haven't spent anything.
Don, do you know the answer to that? Do you know if we have any painting coming up before the end of the fiscal with Scott?
I know Scott was trying to schedule repainting some of the picnic shelters, and I can't remember which park it was at, but that's typically what we do. We try and do a few shelters each year.
You said you were going to paint City Hall. Where's that going to come from?
In the City Hall budget that you went from
the
earlier,
one we did
you'll see
okay.
it's going to be painted in this fiscal, so that's why the City Hall maintenance line item in the City Hall budget was down for next year.
Okay.
The exterior of City Hall.
Well, I think for $20,000, Don, it would be worth knowing what we're going to paint.
I'll get that information and report it back to you when I come back with another.
If necessary, we can reduce that number too.
Well, whatever. The other one is building supplies and material. Last year you spent $16,536. The budget this year is $38,500, and you're spending at the rate of a little under $10,000. You spent $6,900. So the $38,000 looks, unless you got a specific project, looks high.
I will get those answers for them back tomorrow.
Okay, and the one below it, electric parts, is the same thing. You're spending at the rate of $10,000. You spent $10,000 last year. You got $18,000, and there could be good reasons for them. I'm not doubting that.
Don, can you look? I know we printed out those historicals, but we'll look at those. I don't want to just compare to 1 year because some of these things are cyclical. I don't want to say I can drop it a bunch and then all of a sudden we need some Trex board replacement on the boardwalk. So we'll look at a 5-year and get back to you.
So you got 3 of them:
Yeah.
the painting, the building supplies and material, and electric parts supply.
Gotcha.
They may all be right. I don't know.
of the facilities management department, is there one individual, or does this fall into yourself, to actually do the inspections to make sure that the facilities are all up to code and up to life safety issues?
We do an inspection, a safety inspection with our risk management folks each year. And that is done. Scott Dawson, our facilities division manager, works with now Dave Keiki to do those.
And thereby you determine what needs are out there.
Scott Dawson does his own evaluations to recommend improvements that need to be made to our but safety, those concerns are done with risk to take a look at it with a different set of eyes to maybe see something that we don't see.
Okay.
You got an answer on the painting? Okay.
It's quick.
The painting is going to be the McWilliam Park area, the picnic facilities there on the south side of the bridge.
Okay.
Anything else on facilities?
Are any upgrades planned for the River House, or would that fall under recreation?
We don't have any planned, but Rob may have some that.
I don't think there's any plans to do anything. Not in the budget, no.
Next, we have non-departmental, which we did at first. I think that covers us for the day.
Started with
Well, the only thing about non-departmental, we have a sick leave payout here, which is worthy of Cindy commenting about, $138,982.
We talked about that. That was for the layoffs.
Yeah, that along with the unemployment compensation is directly tied to the layoffs that we're contemplating at October 1st. That's the numbers for the actual people that will be let go.
So depending on what our decision is in terms of the layoffs, and that will be not decided this week, that may be worked on for the next couple months, then those numbers may vary.
We made one change, for instance, today with the delivery services attendants, so that will be reflected in these numbers, both the unemployment comp and the payout.
Anything else anyone would like to bring up? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much. Thank you.